Science. Well, we might put Ben Winston on. We don't know yet, but he made the One Direction film that's the biggest film in the world. So here is Ben Winston. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, Ben. Ben will say more than hello, Richard, by the end of this interview.
If it goes well.
We're going to talk about your film, which is technically, am I right in saying it right now, it is the biggest film in the world?
As in today? Yeah, it's number one film worldwide at the moment.
And you've made it?
Me and a group of people, but yes.
You produced it?
Yes.
It's your company?
Yes, co-production, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I'm very excited. I'm not trying to play it down. This is a good day.
Yeah, and the film is about One Direction.
It is. One Direction, This Is Us.
This is us.
Yes.
And it is, we'll talk about it more in a second. I was trying to come up with a really funny joke there.
Go on, what were you going to try?
It was another film, and I was trying to think about some film. I was trying to think about a film that had come out recently that clearly wouldn't be the number one film in the world. I couldn't find it in my head, Ben.
Right.
I fluffed the joke. That's
Okay.
basically what I'm telling
Well,
you.
we'll just pretend that whole last 2 minutes just didn't happen.
That'd be for the best.
Okay, cool.
We'll cut this bit out of the podcast.
Sure.
Ben Winston, did you know that it's transfer deadline day?
Of course I did, yeah.
How did you know?
Well, because I'm a big Arsenal fan and all I do is check Twitter to see who we've
Is
signed.
that all you do?
Well, not all I do.
No, you make films.
Yeah.
You make films about One
Occasionally,
Direction.
for sure.
You also direct. You produce and direct a lot of One Direction's music videos.
Yeah.
You've done a couple. You're doing a couple more.
Yeah, I do.
How did you get to know One Direction?
Well, actually, I did a film a few years ago. I just sound like a bit of a boy band obsessive here, which I don't think I am, Richard. As someone who knows me, you can say that I'm not.
No, you're not.
But I did the JLS movie about 3 years ago. We did a JLS. It was called Eyes Wide Open or Eyes Wide Shut. I can't remember. which.
You can't have called it Eyes Wide Shut.
Well, no,
because that's the name of the Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman.
No, sure. Well, actually, Stanley Kubrick thing.
The Stanley Kubrick film.
Okay, whichever. It was the JLS 3D movie. So we made that, and that came out 3 years ago, and also did very well. And I met One Direction at the premiere. And got on really well with them instantly. They have the same management as JLS. Got chatting to them, and
That's
sort of
lovely. So
and
it's just coming back from networking at a premiere.
Well,
that really works, does it?
I guess you sort of have to be slightly good at your job as well. I mean, like just having a chat with somebody and like socialising doesn't necessarily mean you get to do all their stuff. But yeah, so
how did the JLS thing come about?
Oh, blimey. Okay, so are we just going to do a whole career CV here, Richard?
Well,
okay.
no, it's interesting.
So I was producing a show with my very best friend, James Corden, and we were doing together James Corden's World Cup Live, and JLS were on the show, and I got chatting to them, and they said, ITV have asked us to do a Christmas special for ITV, so I went and my company produced that, and James co-produced it with me, actually. And got on very well with them and did lots of their stuff for many years and still do sort of quite a few of their music videos, and I did their movie and all of that. And so One Direction I met through that and started working with them and have watched and admired their success and rise over the past 3 years with amazement and
I think we've all watched that with amazement.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal.
We must examine that in a minute. And also,
For sure.
the film as well explores the impact of that sudden rise on their parents and their families.
It does. I think that it's not just a film that girls are going to just sit there and scream at. I mean, obviously that is part of it. But I hope that we've made a film that also reflects how this phenomenon came about and why is it, and try to get to the bottom of what is it about these 5 very normal, humble boys that has suddenly turned them into the biggest music artists in the world. And I think that's, I hope, what we do within the film.
And the story in itself, you're dealing with a good story there. You're talking about 5 boys that came from nothing, that took part in a TV talent show with Simon Cowell. He stuck them together on the show and they exploded. And it seems to me as well that their success is also very happily and fortuitously dovetailed with the explosion of social media, that seems to have played a part in what's happened.
It's played a massive part. I mean, somebody asked me recently, they said, are there any scripted moments? Is it a bit like Spice World, the movie, where, you know...
I never saw that. Did you see it?
No, I never saw it either, but people often ask that me. Is it, you know, do they act? Are there sketches? Is there a script? And I sort of think about it and say, if a script writer came to you and said that 3 years ago, there was 5 boys. One of them did a paper round. One of them worked part-time in a bakery. One of them worked in the aisles of Toys R Us while they were at school. All coming from very normal, humble family backgrounds. And within 3 years, they would be the biggest stars in the world, have a #1 movie, have 2 #1 albums in America, be superstars across the globe, Asia, America, you know, wherever they go. That's a better story than any scriptwriter could ever write. So there's no scripting in this. Just telling this story is enough of an amazing movie, I hope, that people will sort of be quite shocked by.
There was a documentary on Channel 4 recently about One Direction fans, which weirdly did really badly. It did, to use a bit of TV jargon, It only got half the slot average.
Yes.
But I was amazed it didn't do very well. I quite enjoyed it as a documentary. You weren't so keen?
I wasn't keen.
Were you worried
no.
it was like a rival documentary?
Well, I think it was definitely opportunist in that.
Do you?
Of course. I mean, it was no coincidence that it came out while we were doing the marketing for our film. Suddenly, Channel 4 put together a film about the fans in the same time that we're plugging our movie. But
what
then
did you like about it?
I didn't think it was a fair reflection of the fans, actually. As somebody who sort of literally, for the last year and a half, probably travelled on the tour bus with the boys and met fans from across the globe, I felt that it found very extreme characters, reflected them quite badly. I felt it gave them false hope. You know, if you film somebody outside Wembley Stadium, there was a scene just for people who didn't see it, which is obviously not probably the majority of your viewers.
Pretty much everybody,
because it didn't rate very well. And I think Daisy Asquith, who the filmmaker, is an amazing filmmaker. I love her films, and I was therefore I just felt like it was a bit opportunist and didn't really say anything. They took two girls down to Wembley Stadium who they'd followed as characters and made them stand outside Wembley Stadium hoping to meet the boys who were doing a press conference.
Who, of course, they don't get to meet.
Of course they don't get to meet because if the boys did come out and meet them, there would be a riot because there were 7,000 kids waiting outside. There's not enough security barriers. They wouldn't be able to meet them all. There are 5 guys who would get crushed and all the girls would get crushed too. But instead, the documentary just said, I can't believe they didn't come out and meet the fans. And it was just so silly, I thought. It was sort of TV making at my least favourite style of television making, where you know what you're trying to make before you make it.
Here's what I would say I did like about it, though, is that it made... I understand why some fans wouldn't have enjoyed their portrayal. I thought it made being a One Direction fan look like quite a lot of fun. And that was partly about social media, that they are kind of like a big community.
Well, that's definitely true. I think that, you know, the amount of people that you meet on the road and they say, we've met our best friends.
Yeah, right, exactly.
From being One Direction fans.
They're mates hanging out.
And
that's how I started to see it.
Listen, you're right. There was a lot of charm in it and there were certain moments in it. But you know what? I think that I look back to my childhood and I was an Arsenal nutter. And I loved Arsenal. And I think there's sort of some symmetry in that.
Exactly.
And I don't know if I was as crazy as them, but, you know, anyway.
You work with a lot of people of interest, Ben. You work with Gary Barlow a lot. You work with Gary Barlow?
Yes.
On his documentaries and
sure, yeah, whatever he sort of does on telly, I try and do quite a bit of it.
Do you? You're his man. You're his TV man.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him if I'm his TV man. But we've worked a lot together. We did the Jubilee film last year. We travelled around the Commonwealth making "Song for the Queen."
It was great.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, you did review. You were very lovely about it. Actually, I remember.
Boyd Hilton on the TV reviews reviewed it right here.
Yeah.
One Direction is the film that you've just made. One Direction. This Is Us. A movie about One Direction, which, well, you've had an almost literal ringside seat. Well, it's not literal because it's not a ring, but you've had a seat there on the front row.
Yes, on a tour bus.
On a tour bus,
yes.
Watching these guys over the last year and a half. Are they? I mean, in a way, they've exploded in the last year. I mean, I know they were big a year ago, but it just seems that they get...
Well, I think it's interesting with them. I often try and think, and I do in the film as well, why is it them? Why so big and what is it about them?
Well, why not... So, for example, JLS, who you also worked with and made a movie with.
Yeah.
They were very big in the UK.
JLS did brilliantly in the UK. They were absolute phenomenon, and still do. I think their tours sold out. They're doing 30 dates at arenas. I don't think they ever succeeded internationally because, in truth, I don't think the label ever invested in them internationally much. I think that with One Direction, here's the thing: the timing of One Direction was fantastic for them for a few reasons. Firstly, they came out at a time when Britain was cool. So when I was growing up, everything was about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Every kid wore an American flag. It was like we wanted to be like the Americans. Nowadays, I think you go across the globe and kids are wearing Union Jacks. The royal family are back in being cool. The Olympics was amazing. It was like...
Lots of telly is doing quite well in America.
Lots of telly is doing well. And I think that they came out at a time when Britain was cool. So there you got 5 boys. And the other thing about them is their personalities. They don't try and be anybody that they're not. Genuinely, they don't. And I think some pop stars act in a way where they feel they need to be styled in a certain way. They feel that they need to dance all together. They feel like they need to almost posture. And these boys have come along and they're the quintessential British good-looking boy next door. They are everything that you think they are. They're very humble, they're very modest, they're very fun, they're very anarchic in a way. And I think that in sort of a pop rock and roll way.
They're not rock and roll.
They're not rock and roll, but they're having fun. And I think that they have sort of captured the heart of their generation, really. And then, of course, you can't overlook how social networking and those sites have really affected them. I think back in the day when you were in a boy band or any sort of music group, you'd need to go to these international territories and you'd need to plug the heck out of your album. So you'd go to Italy, for example, and you'd do 5 or 6 interviews and TV shows. Then you'd go back again and do a lot more promo. Then maybe the third time that you went, you would maybe have a few fans because they would have seen you before. One Direction, I remember the first time we went to Italy with them 3 years ago, and I went with them, and the boys said, there will be nobody who knows us here. We're going to go from sort of quite well-known people in England, and we're going to walk off a plane, and nobody will know us, and we just have to do promo and get our name out there. And genuinely, Richard, we walked off that plane into that airport, and I would say there were about 5,000 people at Milan's airport, and a crush waiting for them. Because the way that kids and that generation of teenagers view music and view artists is totally different. They see that something's trending on Twitter. Louis Tomlinson, Niall Horan, trending on Twitter. They click on that. They go to their YouTube videos. You couldn't have done either of those back then. And suddenly, before you even know it, you touch down in a country and you have a huge fan base. You know, the last sort of scene in the film is in Mexico City. They'd never been to Mexico. They'd never done an interview on a Mexican TV show. They'd never stepped foot in the place. We went there. I remember we landed at 1 a.m. We got to our hotel. The 3 roads around it were crushed with people. I think something like the police estimated that 11,000 people had turned out outside the hotel. They did 2 nights playing 80,000 people in the stadium. They could have done another 10. They were the front page of every newspaper
in Mexico.
And that can't happen, I don't think, without social media and social networking, communicating how, so that they can watch those YouTube videos.
So that's where they've had some luck, I would say.
I would say that's where they've had luck, but I think that you need talent, you need modesty, you need to be humble, and I would say that also, to a certain extent, they've captured the heart of the nation, and you go to a gig of theirs, or you see the film where we show a lot of theirs, they're really good. That's the other thing. They're actually really good. And I also think you don't get through, people often pour scorn over these talent shows. But here's the thing, you don't get through 10 weeks of singing live on ITV1 on live telly without having ability. And I think that's what they have as well. But a lot of people have
done that and disappeared. Most people that won the show have disappeared. I would say most have. These guys didn't actually win the show. I don't think JLS won the show, did they?
No, they came third.
Are there people around? Actually, let's talk about football, because Ian Dennis is waiting, our main football transfer guy.
Cool.
We'll come back and talk more about this. Far more important.
It is.
This is how to make I think, look, we're talking about One Direction and football.
I love it.
This today should be a massive ratings hit.
Only on 5 Live can you go Syria, One Direction, football. It's amazing.
Ian Dennis, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Richard. And I know Ben is a massive Arsenal fan.
I am. What have you got for us?
And I would say, rather than One Direction, I would say you're heading in the right direction.
Oh, I see what you've done there, Ian. Okay.
Because you've agreed £42.4 million for Real Madrid, a fee for Mesut Ozil.
Yes.
You've agreed personal terms for him. It's going to shatter the club's transfer record, which was previously, £15 million for Andre Arshavin.
That's all it was, 15?
Yeah.
We don't spend,
You're not a very ambitious club, are you?
We're a very ambitious club, Richard, I'll have you know. We just don't spend money.
The most money you've ever spent is 15 million
16 years in the Champions League in a row, Richard, I'll have you know.
Where did you do it?
Reached the knockout stages.
Season was terrible. Last season was terrible.
Well, you say
the
it's
knockout
terrible.
stages 13 times in a row.
Exactly, thank you. Yeah.
It was all a bit middling last season, wasn't it?
Richard, are you actually going to try and talk to me about football? Are you going to really sit here and your red trousers and your yellow watch and talk to me about football?
Because what presenters do. I'm not an expert on Syria. I'm not an expert on One Direction. I'm not an expert on football.
No, you're right.
You're taking a bit of information.
I listen to your show. I listen to your show every day, and I think you're an expert in all of these things. I do. Now, can I ask you, Ian? Ozil looks like it's done. We obviously need also a striker and a centre half. There's talk of Demba Ba.
Yeah, you're into talks with Demba Ba, but there are other clubs also in Demba Ba with regards to a season loan from Chelsea. And the other one, I can't help you out with regards to a central defender, but you're also working on a deal to bring in a goalkeeper from Palermo, Viviano, as backup to Chesney.
Frustrating though, Ian, isn't it, that we've left our business once again to the last day of the transfer window, and then you just don't really get the people that we actually wanted. I'm not saying Ozil isn't a great buy. It is.
You wanted Luis Suarez.
We did, and we handled the negotiations of that terribly. I think he's a player that we really could have got had we not tried to be so clever and use a clause in a contract that didn't exist. Wouldn't you agree, Ian?
Yes, yeah, but I do think, I think that Ozil is a signing that can excite many Arsenal fans. I take your point that you've left it late, especially when you think that in 2011, when Arsenal signed Mertesacker, Arteta and Benayoun, they said they wouldn't leave their dealings to so late, in the transfer window, that they've done it yet again. However, obviously they missed out on Higuain, who went to Napoli. But I think if you are able to bring in Ozil, and if it is confirmed later on this afternoon, I think that is a terrific signing.
I do too. Don't get me wrong. I think it's brilliant. You also forgot Park there, but everybody forgot about Park. But yes, I think it's a great signing. Don't get me wrong. My frustration a little bit, and by the way, this isn't with Arsene Wenger, because I am deeply in the Arsene Wenger is a hero camp, and in Arsene I utterly trust. There's nobody else in the world I'd want running my football club. My problem is that actually Ozil replaces Nasri. What we haven't done is replace a Fabregas. We haven't replaced Van Persie. We sell players and then don't replace them with high enough quality to really compete, and that's what is the frustrating thing about the way we do our business.
Yeah, but then it makes it all the more remarkable that despite selling all the quality that you have had,
of course,
that Wenger continues to make sure that you're still in the top
and
four.
That's why Arsene Wenger critics I think are wrong, because without him we wouldn't have been in the Champions League for so many years and wouldn't be able to compete and really against the big boys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not expecting you though. Just to finish off, I'm not expecting Kabay to be added to that list.
Right. Okay.
I don't think that will happen.
Fellaini gone to Man United?
That's edging its way, yes.
That's going to happen.
And also they've triggered the release clause for Ander Herrera of Athletic Bilbao for €36 million.
Richard, who's your tip to win the Championship this year, the Premiership?
Manchester United probably will. Arsenal won't, definitely.
Yeah, I know that. I accept.
You know that.
I do know that.
Well, that's why Wenger's got to go.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
Ian Dennis, thank you very much indeed. Now, let's talk about One Direction again. As much as I enjoyed that football interlude, loved it.
I thought you did really well. I thought you fitted in really well in that.
What I do like about football is the soap opera around it. So,
yeah.
like Luis Suarez just saying to Liverpool, "I'm through with you lot. I want to go. I desperately want to go." And now he's staying. And I do think, how do you fit back in when you've been pretty rude?
I'm surprised Liverpool didn't sell him. I understand why they didn't, but I think it's surprising. It's very surprising because I think all he's going to do is unsettle the dressing room. Yeah, absolutely. He's got to go into that dressing room with a load of players that he has categorically said to them, I do not want to be in this dressing room with you lot.
Does it matter on the field? I guess it doesn't necessarily, does it? If you can probably play well and not get on. You see this in bands. I know One Direction get on, but people don't always have to get on to produce good work together.
Here's the thing. If you are Luis Suarez, who is probably in the top 5 players in the Premiership, I don't think anybody in that dressing room cares. I think they're probably just delighted that he stayed.
He's there.
I think that if you're not as good as you think you are, and you go around and you say, I want to leave, and then you stay, then it becomes awkward, because then I think you're bigger than your boots.
One Direction, This Is Us is your film.
It is.
It's the biggest film in the world right now.
I love it that you're saying.
Come on, that's a fact. Well, it's a big deal. It's bigger than any film in Hollywood.
Well, I've just found out
you've overtaken The Butler, haven't you? You've overtaken The Butler.
We have. And the film to compare us to is probably Justin Bieber's film. That's the film that's most similar, because we were never going to do Skyfall numbers, but Bieber had an incredibly successful film. Looks like we've doubled him internationally in one weekend, and so it's very exciting.
How much money will you make personally from this?
Not very much.
That's not a serious question.
Not very much.
I hope you do.
It's not about the money, Bacon. It's Richard. It's about the creative arts. It really is. Come on.
Now, here's the thing. Can you be in making this film that you have made? You know the guys well. Did Harry Styles live in your attic at one point or something? Or was it like? Is that true?
It is true. Yes, he did live. He used to. Yeah,
I think it might have been in GQ recently. But when did Harry Styles live in your attic?
Oh, I don't know the exact dates.
Not recently.
Not recently.
Not recently.
No.
Why did he live in your attic?
Because he bought a house, was moving into it, and needed somewhere to stay. Asked if he could stay a couple of weeks, so he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a big issue, in truth, until I think Morgan Spurlock mentioned it in a GQ magazine, and then suddenly I had fans coming around to my house, which was slightly bizarre considering he had moved out.
No, you did not.
Well, of course I did, yes. They sort of,
How many?
Oh, I don't know, about 11 or 12.
Did they ring the bell?
Yes, they rang the bell and said,
what do you say to
them? Ridiculous. He doesn't live here. He lived there about 6 months before that, but there we are.
Do the hardcore fans know who you are now?
Yeah.
And they must come up to you and say, what's it like knowing Harry? You can have his number.
They get very excited. Yeah.
Do some of them annoy you?
Never.
Do some of them annoy you One Direction?
Never.
Like, some of them must cross the line. I mean, some of them must.
Let's be very clear. Like, these boys know where they've come from. They know that it's entirely the fans that have backed them. They know it's the fans that are making their dreams come true.
Fans can behave a bit irrationally, can't they?
Of course they can, and that's fine. But no, I don't think they annoy them. Do they annoy me? No, they come up and say, we love your film, or we love your music videos, or that's beautiful. That's lovely.
Do you?
But yes, I definitely.
They probably annoy you when they ring your bell on your house.
Well, that was once after a One GQ magazine thing, and it hasn't happened since, because I think they've realised that me and my wife and dog are slightly boring. And if they're going to hang outside my house, they're not going to see much apart from me in a dressing gown on a Thursday night putting out the rubbish. And I'm not sure that's something they want to see.
Can you be objective in making this film, because you know them so well?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Them for 3 years.
Can you be objective making a film? I think that's really true. I think that here's the thing. Objectivity is interesting. I think that I do really love them. I think they're lovely, lovely boys.
Is there criticism in the film, for example? Like there'll be music critics.
No, I don't say there isn't.
This is manufactured music and it's not very good music.
Absolutely.
Do you have that in the film?
Well, we have journalists' opinions. We did an interview with somebody from the NME, an interview from somebody from the Guardian, talking about them and why they've been a hit and what people would criticise them for. But no, I'll be honest. I think they're the most wonderful five boys you could meet. It is remarkable to me how none of them have got too big for their boots or have got arrogant, and amazingly they've stayed so level-headed. And I think
who's your favourite?
I don't have a favourite.
Who's your least favourite?
I don't have a least favourite. I love them all equally. But you know, I haven't. I don't.
Who's the favourite with the fans? Harry, presumably.
No, not necessarily.
I'd say
Niall is.
Really?
I'd say Niall's very popular. I think Harry is more known to the non-One Direction fans, but I think the One Direction fans are. I think they're quite equal. You can always tell. There's different types of fans who like different types of the boys. That's always quite interesting.
I wondered when watching them explode like this, that they're very young. Harry's still, isn't he, 19 or 20?
Yeah, he's going to be 20 in February. Yeah.
But
they've got old heads on them. You've met them before, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Well, they were both at a wedding we were at a year ago.
Yeah, that's right. Three of them were there.
Three or four
of them were there. Yeah, and they're remarkably mature, fun boys, aren't they?
That might still be some of your best work. You were James Gordon's best man.
I was.
And you made a video for his wedding that unfortunately is not available to the public, but it's an astonishing piece of work.
Thanks.
In which he used to be in a little pop band, and you get all the other band members back together without him.
He used to be in a boy band called Insatiable, and he wrote original songs, and it was called Girl, Are You Ready? Just Tell Me When You're Ready. And I managed to track down the other members of this boy band that he was in when he was like 16 and reformed them without him knowing, and did the music video for the original song that he had written. And he didn't even know that we knew the lyrics, let alone that we'd found a tape of it. We went into a studio, we re-recorded it, and we made the music video, and I managed to persuade Chris Martin, Paul McCartney and One Direction, JLS, Ollie Murs, Ronan Keating, all to come and do cameos within this music video.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing. It's like 150 of us at a wedding and you put that video on. Yeah. I've never seen a best man speech storm a room like that before.
Well, it was I thought I had to do something with that crowd. There's enough comedians in that room that they were like, well, who's this guy? So I thought I had to do something.
Do they have people around them trying to keep them on the straight and narrow, because they're leading such an exceptional life now that and they clearly, they're not rock and roll, you can just tell, but people must worry. When you get that level of fame, things could go in that direction. Are there people whose job it is to try and advise them and keep them on the straight and narrow and that kind of thing?
I think that what's the key to them is that they've kept the same people around them since they started. The same hair and makeup, the same stylist, the same production team, the same management. Even me, I met them when they just started, and they just went, okay, we'll just use that guy then for everything we do. And I don't think that's necessarily because I'm very good. It's just because they like the same people around them, because they are not the sort of band that would suddenly go, oh, actually, we want Rihanna's producer to suddenly come and do our shows. It's not. They're very grounded. They like the people who knew them before they were massive, and I think that's what keeps them humble.
Do you ever worry about them?
Of course I do.
What do you worry?
Well, you'd worry with any band of how you cope at that age, being so famous. But then, genuinely, you spend 5 minutes with them, and you just can't not be amazed by how normal they've remained. And I think that's because, and we explore why that is within the film. And I think that's because they do keep their family very close. They keep their old friends very close. They come out on the road with them. They have the same people around them. They're almost their road family. And I think that keeps you sane. They never have anybody around them that is going to blow smoke up their bums, and I think that's very important.
What's the security like around them now?
I mean, it has to be great. Well, the security's job is
like
partly
their own secret service.
Well, it is quite big in some places, but actually part of it is just keeping the fans safe, because they've got to organise it. There's no one there to make sure there's no crushes and what have you. The other thing I'd say is this, and people watch Bieber right now, and I've worked a little bit with him as well recently, and people say, oh, he's going off the rails and this and that. And here's the thing with him, and I wouldn't know if he is or he isn't. Whenever I've worked with him, he's been fine. But the key to him is in a band, you have 4 people next to you to say you can't do that. So you can't turn up at 10 o'clock when you were supposed to be there at 9, because there's 4 people who aren't going to let you do it. And actually just being in a band like One Direction keeps your feet on the ground, because you have other people there with you experiencing the same thing. And luckily they're friends and they love each other. Otherwise that would be a problem, as it has been in other bands. But there's a real bond with the 5 of them, because they've all gone on this journey, and that's what keeps them sort of grounded, I think.
Do you worry, because their parents are in the show and they talk about how much they miss them, because they better.
Well, that's the thing.
The mum of one of them has like a cardboard cutout.
Yeah, Karen Liam's mum keeps a cardboard cutout in the bedroom because she feels. There's a really poignant moment when Anne, who Harry's mum, who's so lovely, she says, my son went to an audition 3 years ago. and the truth is he just never came home.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Jay, Louis's mum, says that Louis has been home 5 days. He has had 5 days where he's been able to go back home to Doncaster in 3 years. And yet he lived at home. Up until he went to that audition, he was at home every day. And since he's been back 5 days. So I think for them, it's been a huge upheaval. And I think that's also something that we really look at in the film. We go home with each of the boys and we see what their life was like before and why they're, you know, so close to their roots.
As their parents, they must worry about how they transition out of this, because at some point in some form it has to end. We're not going to be doing this at 50. You know, the
Rolling Stones are.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I mean,
but you cut there a point. I mean, that would be a harder sell.
They're aware of it, Richard, I think, and I think the boys are. I don't think the boys are 5 boys who sort of think that this is going to last forever. I think that they are enjoying every single moment of it. They're working incredibly hard. They are trying to make and write as much music as they can that they believe in. And I think that if you spend all your time worrying about the future, you're never going to enjoy the present. And I think that that's something that's very relevant to them. I don't think we're going to see, look, I might be wrong, but right now, as someone who spent a huge amount of time with them, you often see fallouts of boy bands afterwards where you know, who's the one that goes to rehab? Who's the one that this happens to? Who's the one that happens to? I can't see that with these 5. I feel like they're just far too normal. And I think that that is actually the key to their success. I think that if they weren't normal, that's not what would be successful right now. And I think that actually their normality, which might sound boring, but their normality and their boy next door charm is the reason they're huge. And as soon as they lose that, they're not going to be huge anymore anyway.
Well, that's it for the Ben Winston